And hello, Hearts of Oak. Thank you so much for joining us once again. And it is great to have a brand new guest to Hearts of Oak, someone who had the privilege of meeting back, goodness, 2.5 years ago, and that is Jarrow Rogovin. Jarrow, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, you're very welcome. It's a pleasure, Peter, and we had a great time together in LA. Well, it's sad to say if you come and visit one of my favorite uh, restaurants here. It's a 1960s road cafe. It was called The Real Inn, a great fish restaurant on PCH. Along with the rest of the HUD, it burned down. You know,
We had that great
almost unreal.
fish and chips up in Malibu. Is that still standing or is that all gone?
No, that's what's gone.
Oh,
That yeah, it's heartbreaking.
well,
Yeah.
we will. If I ever venture to the West Coast again, we will need to find somewhere else. And I do hope that I've talked to Kevin Sorbo a few weeks ago about what's happened on the West Coast, and I hope and pray that that is able to be rebuilt. Um, uh, it's separate from Gavin Newsom's craziness. I hope there's some common sense in there, but
Well, it's more the mayor's craziness in terms of the rebuilding. But to bring this full circle, you might say that much of the Malibu coast and then Altadena and Pasadena inland now look like Gaza. So
wow.
that brings us to our the one to be rebuilt, the other not to, and we'll get into that.
We will get into that, and for the viewers and listeners, Jar was a entrepreneur, businessman, philanthropist, and a great supporter of many Israeli causes in the U.S. Being a stalwart in supporting many of the media and the think tanks that support Israel's president, a voice for Israel in the US, which is always a strong voice, and I wish we
Including
had that strong voice in the UK.
including Henry Jackson Society in London.
Henry Jackson Society, the great Douglas
Founder
Murray,
Douglas.
part of that. I know. Douglas is oh, every speech I see of Douglas is blows me away. His
Well,
ability to present.
he's separate from the Henry Jackson now. He's uh, been actually in New York a great deal, traveling around a great deal, lecturing, but he's based in New York now.
Yeah, no, I know he is. So, um, but let's get on to this issue with Gaza. And you've written a great paper, and we'll put this as a link in the description. Can an endless war be ended? And you've sent this to me, Jarrow, and I've gone through it with a highlighter because there's so much in it. Only 22 pages, but there is a lot of information in it. It's a fast moving issue, and therefore I'm sure you'll be working on this as an update. But we'll put this document in, and of course update it as and when you're able to. But can I maybe just
22 pages, single spaced.
yeah, I've read. I've been through it, highlighted. But can I ask you maybe just an initial question for you, Jarrow? Why why did you put this together? Because I understand the issue of Israel, and we'll touch on all of that, and obviously being in the news with the bodies being returned and the issue of Hamas. But I guess living in the US, there are many Jews that maybe turn a blind eye to what is happening, and yet you put time and energy and effort into producing this paper, which is a legitimate way forward. Why put the effort in, and why not turn a blind eye?
Well, I guess I just don't turn a blind eye to a lot of things. And as passionate as I am for Israel and the U.S. Israel relationship, I also have compassion for the Palestinians who, some 20%, hopefully, it's that many, who want real lives, who want to get along with Israel and Jews and don't want to be cut off from the world, that want to have normal lives. And we in Judaism we call this for the sake of the righteous. This goes back biblically in the Torah, to Abraham bargaining with God over Sodom and Gomorrah, where he tries to cut a deal with God not to destroy the cities if he can find a certain number of worthy people. And God is just too confident. Oh, yeah, sure, go ahead. So Abraham goes, maybe this is, there's a trap here. And he lowers the numbers, and it comes way down to only 10. Well, it turns out he can't find anyone. Even his own cousin is a bum. But out of pure nepotism, cousin's family gets saved. So, more than nepotism, there are people there. It's also a very dangerous threat beyond Israel, beyond the Palestinians. This threatens the stability of Egypt, of Jordan. You have what they call the street. They are creating the incitement, the hatred is creating literally genocidal expectations. And for decades, for generations, these inept autocratic Arab leaders have cynically used the Palestinians as a distraction from their own incompetence and kleptocracy. It's a dangerous situation. It has to end. With Iran, they're threshold nuclear. I said to then Congressman Mike Waltz, who is now the president's national security advisor, this was September last year at the Republican Jewish Coalition Conference annual convention in Nevada. And before his speech, I had some private words from him for a bit. And I said to him, China is the multi-factorial, long-term strategic threat. But threshold nuclear Iran is the imminent existential threat. And Congressman Waltz said, I like that. 20 minutes later, he used it in his speech. Unattributed. But this is, a nuclear Iran is not even nuclear Stalin or Mao, who I remember, I'm 74. This is nuclear Hitler. They will use them on the way out, and that day's going to come. As the book of Ecclesiastes says, all things shall pass.
Yeah. And you, my connection with Israel is as a Christian Zionist, and you go back to that history, back to
that's very
King
American
David
and British. Balfour,
the Balfour Declaration.
He was a Christian Zionist.
Exactly. And you touch on Abraham, and I would also look back to King David actually establishing Jerusalem as the capital. And you've got that biblical history that actually connects every Christian to the Holy Land, every Christian to Israel. Because without Judaism, there would be no Christianity. Without Judaism, there would be no Jesus actually going around in the first century, actually speaking in the synagogues in Israel. And that's where the connection is. And I love talking to Jewish friends coming from a Christian understanding and meeting in the middle, because we both have an appreciation of the existence, the importance of the existence of Israel, despite the pressure around to remove Israel from the face of the map.
And without Christianity, we call it Judeo-Christianity. Without Christianity, there would be no American Declaration of Independence and Constitution of the United States of America. It is a Judeo-Christian document.
Yeah, no, 100%. Can I pick up you in your document? And again, we'll post in the description, but you start really by looking at Egypt and Jordan. You say how Egypt and Jordanian historic uncooperativeness should be viewed. You touched on Iran, but it's good to go back to Egypt and Jordan, because they are key to this, not only in relation to proximity, but in relation to their connection and relationship with the so-called Palestinian people in the West Bank and Gaza. So why are Jordan and Egypt key to this huge question of what to do with Gaza and the West Bank?
I know you're going to agree with this, and I think your listeners need to pay close attention to this. Egypt and Jordan have to be viewed with great skepticism, with total cynicism. They are bad actors. They are hypocritical. They are in bad faith, and they are fools. They are endangering themselves. They don't like Israel. They don't like Jews, but they lost the war. Okay? So the national wars against Israel failed, and they were forced, Egypt and Jordan, to sign peace, air quotes, treaties with Israel. But these are cold peaces. They're not a people peace. They are not the Abraham Accords. I walk in Egypt with a kippah, I'm a dead man. Okay? They have allowed rage in the streets. They have allowed the most vile, the most vicious, the ugliest, the most horrific incitement imaginable. The government controls everything there. If they don't like your TV series, you don't film it. Well, they made a TV series based upon a cult of Jews, a rabbi who kills a child for the blood to make matzah for Passover. This was put on their TV. They did this. This is, I mean, this is they're the cannibalistic ghouls psychologically with this kind of stuff.
Tell them, because
sick as can be. You go back, and supposedly Egypt's very upset with the Muslim Brotherhood. When they suppress it and so on. You want to know something? That's gang warfare. You know what I'm getting at? So people understand the Muslim Brotherhood is not a prayer circle. It is it uses religion as a cover, but it's really Nazism. It was founded in 1928 in Egypt by Hassan al-Banna and some other guy. I think his name was Khatub.
Yeah.
They were hanged in the 60s for treason, by the way, trying to overthrow the state. That's what I mean by gang warfare. Hitler wrote Mein Kampf while in prison for the Munich Putsch in 22, published in 23. By 1928, it was translated into Arabic. They had read it, loved it, and melded radical, fundamentalist, Shia based Islam, political Islam. Not intellectual Islam, not normative Islam, but a very, this Salafi form. Okay. This one where, it has to rule the world and women in chadors and, I'm not talking about head covering. We're talking about head to foot, burqas, all this stuff. Though there's now a modern Muslim Brotherhood, though President of Egypt, Sisi's wife, is in a burqa, by the way, black burqa. So they wedded this, and they formed this Nazi-infused fake religion political group with the intention of overthrowing the Egyptian government, creating a caliphate, global this and that. And by the way, a leading member formerly of the Muslim Brotherhood was Khashoggi, Jamal Khashoggi. The question is, why did the Washington Post give this guy journalist credentials? He was the head of the Muslim Brotherhood in Saudi Arabia. He was trying to overthrow the Saudi regime, and then he would have turned. It would have Saudi Arabia would have become the Islamic Republic of Arabia, and funded Hamas. He wrote viciously anti-Semitic articles, or they were actually ghostwritten by him. He wasn't such a writer, and published in Al Monitor. And again, he was a huge voice of support in of Hamas. These are CARE, Council on American Islamic Relations, is a Hamas front group in the United States. Hamas is a Muslim Brotherhood front group. So Sisi's objection to the Muslim Brotherhood is that, the army runs Egypt. They don't want the competition. Philosophically, you need to start parsing the differences, and this is deeply disturbing. So Sisi is not stable, and there's thoughts that there could be another street revolution there. However, when Morsi was ousted, the largest protest in history, 30 million Egyptians took to the streets and demanded his ouster. So, what would take Sisi's place? I've no idea. The whole, it's bizarre. And then you have Jordan, also unstable. The very, possibly 70% of the population is Palestinian, or of the citizenship. And I'll jump ahead here. There are roughly 2 million Syrian and Iraqi refugees. Unlikely they're going back. Even after the ouster of Bashar Assad, there is no economy whatsoever in Syria. Syria is a completely broken country. Syrians who have returned from Turkey, and they had a sign, on exit, they're not coming back. They have no way to make a living, and now they're desperate. They don't know what to do. So my plan says, make these Syrians and Iraqis citizens of Jordan. Why? Because they'll be grateful to the monarchy, and that'll shore up the monarchy's support.
These are fairly well-off countries, and Egypt especially gets a lot of funding from the US, seemingly with no expectation
Keep
to
going.
actually.
Keep going. US, UK.
Yeah, trust me, the finger's not pointed to the US, not the UK. I will get there.
Check your taxes. Egypt. I mean, the EU, Europe, and Europe, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, the Emirates. So in my plan, led by America, don't put it all on us. We're in this together. All together now.
Trust me, we are struggling with a chaotic EU that doesn't know what to think and has traditionally been anti-Israeli. And that's why I dumped that in. The US has traditionally been pro-Israel. That's why there is a clash. And that's why President Trump is interesting how he will actually clash heads together and find a peace. And I think his way will win in the end, and the EU will have to line up with that.
Well, all of Europe and Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the Emirates, the Arab allies, in shorthand. Thank you. And then, thank you for the pause there. And the reason why is this is checkbook diplomacy. Instead of a gunboat, it's a checkbook. And we tell them, you are all going to behave, or we snap the checkbooks closed. Now, that happened with Morsi. Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, they were disgusted with Morsi. They closed the checkbooks, and Morsi was forced out in Egypt. So this can be done, and it has to be much more than simply dealing with the Palestinians. And I'll get to that in a moment. They have to change their incitement. They have to change their tune. They can't keep going this way. Again, it's for their own good. Martin Luther King talked about how the bigot is also a victim of their own bigotry. And we're seeing that.
Because in Egypt, there seems to be that the leadership say one thing to accept money from the US, or I know there was a big aid package from the EU. You put in of 8 billion, so it's on both sides getting money, but that um, so-called respect or so-called moderation or so-called positive treatment to Israel, that doesn't seem to filter down in terms of the population at large.
There's stealth money too. Don't think that it's just the official. There's intelligence and foreign ministry money. There's so much stuff going on. It's beyond belief. Give an example, and a disgusting one. USAID, the Agency for International Development, is a branch of the U.S. State Department. It's also a functionary of the CIA. Okay, a lot of projects that are USAID are really CIA fronts. It's another story. Now get this. DOGE, Department of Government Efficiency, Elon Musk's crowd, dug into some of USAID's skullduggery. $310 million in concrete, in cement, was sent to Gaza. Gaza has 300 miles of tunnels. How much of that was paid for by USAID? It's mind-boggling. I mean, what a total. And by the way, they knew they were building tunnels. You knew it. I knew it. It was open source. What schmucks? What schmucks? Okay? I mean, the US government, Europe, the Arab allies, they're all screwballs. They're all incompetent. I mean, this has got to change. Now, fundamental to this, I need to back up. The paper's laid out more orderly than I'm talking. There will be no Palestinian state. Not after October 7th. Done deal. Okay? The Palestinians have not acted ever in a manner befitting a state. And a state doesn't solve problems for these people. A state can actually make things more dangerous. I mean, North Korea, what does that solve? Now, Venezuela, Cuba, the Iranian regime, being a state comes with responsibility, not merely the ability to destroy. And the Palestinians have never once at any time in any place shown the ability to self-govern in a civil way, even eat themselves. They are clans, they are tribes, and they don't like each other. Hamas hates Palestinian Authority. Hamas hates Fatah. Fatah hates Hamas. You know, the greatest single, awkward to use the word great, the single largest, most notable contribution of the Palestinians to history is terrorism. They've normalized terrorism more than anything else. You know why the Palestinian state is so high on the agendas? Their terrorism, their violence. I mean, the Kurds, this is 46, 48 million people without a state. Do you see the hysteria in the streets over them? You know, you've got the Muslims in Burma that aren't getting a fair shake. You don't see terrorism over them. There are various tribes in the Maghreb, North Africa, who have to live as minorities in Arab states. The Druze live harmoniously with whatever government they're with, and most happily, most felicitously in Israel. They're tremendous citizens of Israel, very happy there. America is a nation of nations. Palestinianism, I'll tell you what Palestinianism is. It's not a nationalism. It's not. It's not a unique religion. It's not a unique language. It's not a unique culture, literature, history. It's not. Okay, it's a hodgepodge of people. It sounds a little disrespectful, but you know, it's a collection from around the area. You know, even as far as some from Iraq, some from Egypt, some from Jordan, some from Syria, some were locals. It's a mix. What it is a social, cultural, religious regionalism defined primarily by its opposition to Zionism. Now, is Zionism a real nationalism? It's a people. It's a religion. It's a culture. It's most important, it's a language. Matter of fact, three languages: Hebrew, Ladino, Yiddish. Okay. It's been a nation. It was the only nation as a nation ever in that region. It's a nation also because it's a safe place for Jews who are otherwise very often subject to serious threat and discrimination.
We've seen. We're recording this just a day before it goes out, and of course today I've seen the pictures of the funeral. The body's been returned of the Bibas family. Cherie Bibas was 32. 4-year-old Ariel and 9-month-old Kafir, and we've seen those pictures, and we've seen the celebration of death from the Palestinians or Hamas, and they seem to be one and the same, and yet the concern for life in Israel, and there seems to be a massive divide. One culture, one grouping seems to celebrate death, one seems to celebrate life, and to me, there's a clear divide there, and I know which side I'll be on. I want to be on the side of life.
Yeah, you know, the little children were murdered by hand. And I don't know that if it's been released yet. Were they strangled? Were they did they get their necks broken? Were they pummeled to death? We don't know. Yeah, you know, we don't know. Were they smashed to pieces by fists? We don't know. And their killers are obviously capable of anything. Remember, they also put babies alive in ovens and cooked them alive on October 7th. Okay. Yes, people, that really happened. And you Palestinianists, you're lying, and you know you're lying when you deny this. You know, they're trolling us. Now, what needs to happen is Gazans have to go to Egypt, have to become Egyptian citizens, whether they stay in Gaza or not. By the way, huge numbers of them want to leave. Gaza can't even feed itself. It's small. It's 131 square miles. It's not enough land to anything for 2.4 million people. Populated portions of the West Bank have to go to Jordan. The rest goes to Israel. They need the land for their population and security. It's a growing population. And it's the traditional Jewish lands. And when you make war against, when you're the aggressor in war for 140 years and you lose land. Enough is enough. In Hebrew, in Yiddish, we call this dayenu. Enough is enough. That's now the reason why I propose the Syrians and Iraqi refugees in Jordan become citizens of Jordan is to strengthen the monarchy and balance this increase and offset this increase in Palestinian population. The Palestinians have had a history of making trouble. They've made it in big time in Kuwait, in Lebanon. They caused a civil war that killed 150, 180,000 Lebanese, huge number, portion of the Lebanon population. They in Jordan, they tried to overthrow the king in 71. It's been a problem. Egypt, by attacking Israel, they created in 48. They created Gaza. They're responsible for that mess. And then they kept the refugees there, the Palestinians there. Many of them fled there. The Israelis drove them out. Well, about half were driven out. It was a policy change due to the viciousness of the war in 1948, the War of Independence. That the Israeli government realized that there were just too many people who wanted the Jews all dead, and they pushed them away. So it was half they left. They were typical war refugees, and there were also calls by Arab government radios, particularly Egypt, to leave, and we'll come back triumphant, but our armies are going to cut through. So for your safety, get out. Well, didn't work out that way, thank God. So, but Egypt created the Jordan problem this way. And then they created, it's called the Fedayeen. They created a terrorist group out of Gaza. See, it started then in terms of Gaza. And it was kill a Jew a day. They had a quota. That, along with troop movements in 1956, led to the Sinai campaign in November. And I have a dim memory of that. I was a few days from 6 years old. Before that, you had terrorism by the region's Arabs against Jews, and led very much by Haj Amin al-Husseini, the Grand Mufti of Jerusalem. He ended up fleeing to Berlin after trying to lead a coup against the British in Iraq. He had the Meshuggah crazy idea that if his pro-Hitler guys took over Iraq, Iraq's oil could go to Germany. Of course, there was no way to get it across the Mediterranean. The English Navy was not going to let that happen. But that was his idea. So the coup was put down. He fled to Berlin. The British were after him. He was met with a SS honor guard. Himmler gave him a tour of Auschwitz. He met with Hitler. Hitler made him a commandant in the SS Wehrmacht. He raised 25,000 Bosnian Muslims to fight for Hitler in the Balkans. Bosnia is part of the Balkans, former Yugoslavia. And he rabble-roused for the killing of the Jews. There were a couple of transports, one of 5,000, one of 900, where there was some attempts, Hungarian Jews near the end of the war. There was some attempt to save them. He screamed bloody hell, no, gas them. They were gassed, including the 900 children. It was a totally separate group. So after the war, he was wanted. He managed to escape. He was helped out by a rat line run out of the Vatican of radical rightist, anti-Semitic French priests, and he got to Egypt. Now, he was tried in absentia in Nuremberg and found guilty of war crimes. Okay, so the Palestinian leader, who also spent time during the war, every week there were shortwave radio broadcasts, and in these phony religious sing-songy voice would sing that, jihad against England, jihad against the Jews, jihad for Hitler. So then in Egypt, he joined his nephew, who was a teenager, and took over raising him. That was Yasser Arafat. So, not nice people. Okay? This is completely dysfunctional. And after October 7, there will never be a state. It's
Well,
impossible.
it's interesting because your document, it, as President Trump has announced, and your document kind of seems to fit in with his thinking. This is not an Israel problem. This is a Egypt Jordan problem, and then wider, because the world has fixated on this is Israel have to fix this. What you put down, and seemingly what
Hold on.
President Trump has
Stay
acknowledged.
there. And it's a problem for UK, isn't it? It's a
Yep.
problem.
Yep.
I mean, how do you feel when you go out on the streets of your fabled storied land, your isle of greatness, of history, and see such hooligans, ruffians, so foul and uncouth, screaming basically death to Jews?
Well, as Melanie Phillips called it, Londonistan. That's where I live. So yes.
And they have no love of the UK. They have obviously no love of America. They have no love of constitutions. This is a problem, and it has to be ended. Civilization. The first duty of civilization is to civilize, if only in its own self-defense. And no, leftist, this is not cultural imperialism like you think it is. This is human evolution. Evolution is, there's a biocultural continuum. Evolution is not merely random selection and survival of the fittest. And by the way, even biological evolution is much more complicated than that. I mean, there's been incredible updates to Darwin, but this is another story. It's also cultural. It's also intellectual. When you look at, again, human history, the invention of numbers, the invention of math, the invention of philosophy, of the discovery, the awakening of the intellect, this is evolution also. And we cannot allow maladaptive primitives whose primary motivation is destruction. We cannot allow them to intimidate us. Our fathers and grandfathers didn't fight World War II for these Luddites and primitives. They're gangsters.
Yeah.
And it's got to stop.
I mean,
I've been to 40 countries. I travel the world. I meet all kinds of people, all kinds of cultures, and I delight in it. And what it is that ultimately there's this human spark, human intellect. And it's a party while we're here. Enjoy life. Communicate. But we do that when we respect each other as individuals. I delight knowing you, Peter, and vice versa, I hope.
Yeah.
They don't. They want you to simply be a member of the Borg, a clone. They don't believe in individualism other than, paradoxically, the big brother. And the rest of us are just supposed to be, in line, in step. And by the way, this is why there will always be good versus evil. There will always be conflict because you will always have persons and societies who are oriented around the individual and those who are collectivist. And what's really frightening are the people who compulsively, they have this impulse to control, that these people labor under the peculiar notion that they know how to live our lives better for us than we do for ourselves. Well, they can thought.
Can I just to finish off on the wider side? You touch on the other nations, on Lebanon, Syria, Iran, and Russia. And Israel are in a interestingly, exceedingly strong position as far as I see. They have reduced Hamas down to a rubble, literally, and decimated them. They have destroyed Hezbollah, very much so. Of course, you've got Syria's collapsed, Iran, and you point out this, Iran can no longer have those supply lines into Israel with Hezbollah. Israel seems to be in a stronger position militarily, certainly coming from the position on the 7th of October, where it was humiliated, and it's risen to that and actually restored that confidence. Therefore, whenever President Trump talks about Israel in the position, Israel seems to be in a very strong situation, while the neighboring countries seem to be weakened. And to me, that can only be positive for the only democracy in the area.
Well, a couple of things there. First of all, Israel has degraded substantially Hamas and Hezbollah, hasn't destroyed them. Okay.
Yeah.
These organizations still have a lot of support and a lot of personnel. That's why Gaza cannot be reconstituted, because there will be no way to pull the plug on Hamas. Who is going to run, who's going to step up and say, well, okay, I'm going to teach philosophy at a community college in Gaza, and we're going to start looking at dead card. No, they'll be shot, or worse.
Well, Trump's vision for Gaza 2035 doesn't really fit in with Hamas.
No, but it true. But how do you get there?
Yeah.
And I don't know about Gaza 2035. First of all, the tunnels have to be, that 300 miles of tunnels, it has to be destroyed. That's a phenomenally huge, expensive undertaking right there. That's unbelievable. Also, I don't know who really wants to go back there. The real resort of Sinai is Sharm el Sheikh. Okay, and then you need to. Gaza could have been. I don't know what it can be now. What has happened? It's in the paper. The financiers. All right, so America, Europe, Arab allies. One of the things we have to put together, we have to put personnel in there to enforce, is we need in both Sinai and West Bank, respectively, Egyptian and Jordanian special forces. These are going to be well vetted, well monitored, meaning give them lie detectors periodically. And they would have to be the police, the constabulary, because Hamas is going to be relentless. They are extremely violent. I mean, this is like having Trend Agua, this Venezuelan gang running Gaza. They're as bad. They're extremely violent. Um, and something else to bear in mind how corrupt it is. The son of President Sisi was somehow involved in the tunnel smuggling. I mean, this is it's been on the news. I mean, this is pretty incredible stuff. I mean, we've the corruption. You know, if you think Doge has a problem, it's nothing compared to what's going on there. But this completely puts an end to UNRWA. I should add, by the way, this is a regional settlement of Palestinians. Palestinians in Lebanon and Syria are actually in refugee camps. They're not citizens. They're not allowed to own land, be in the professions, and so on. Well, again, checkbook diplomacy. A lot of money is going to those people. And with Syria, we can say, look, you want rebuilding money? Here's the deal. Okay? They're not in camps anymore. They're citizens of your country. They have all the rights of that citizenship. So they get to have a passport, education, etc. It has to be regional, and we have to stop. As donors, we have to stop being facilitators, because when they, it's like dealing with addicts. And this time, we have to really mean it.
Yep.
Because we have to stop facilitating. The Palestinians need adult supervision. They are incapable of self-governance. If there were a Palestinian state, you know what would happen? It wouldn't be 3 months, and the most violent group, Hamas, would take over, the sole goal to be he who continues to lead the war against the Jews.
Yeah.
Excuse me. The difference between Hamas and the Palestinian Authority, Fatah, is Fatah is somewhat secular, somewhat. But they too want to take over what was Israel. Of course, they have the West Bank. They don't limit it to that. Jordan, Gaza and Jordan. Why Jordan? Because when you look at the old Turkish maps, that was the Palestine Mandate. 78% of it went to Transjordan in 1921. They want the whole thing. The same thing is true with, excuse me, but there's a difference. Fatah, Palestinian Authority, would settle for a kleptocracy. Hamas wants to be a caliphate. They want to be the foundation stone for a global Islamist dictatorship. And notice I didn't say Islamic. I said Islamist, political radical Islam, not Islam.
Jarrow, there is a lot into. Let's bring it to a conclusion there. There is a lot in. We will put the link. Can an endless war be ended? We'll put a link to that in the description for our viewers and listeners. And I know that many of our viewers and listeners are hugely concerned at the position of Israel and very open and sympathetic wherever, from the UK, the US, or elsewhere. And I know they will want to delve into this. And
but again, remember, be concerned about your own country too. I'm very upset. The mob scenes I saw in the UK, the mob scenes I saw in the US. I went to UCLA. I went to camp, 55 years ago. I went to check out the campus last year. It was horrifying.
Yeah.
I mean, when I was there, the joke was Juicy LA because there were so many Jews back then, and open, friendly campus. Today, it's been a defendant in a Title VI federal lawsuit due to anti-Semitic activities. This has become a cancer in the West.
Yeah.
So, we're passionate about Israel, and we have to be passionate about our own societies
Yeah.
because this is a real threat to us.
No, and I echo, we've had the same issues in the UK, where more and more we're seeing Jews are less and less welcome in our institutions of learning. And we've seen the same happen across the US, and it's concerning in parts of Europe, what is also happening. So this is this is a key issue which we all face, whether you live in the US, whether you live in the UK, or in Europe or elsewhere. We are all having this same battle for freedom, for the right, for those who respect Israel, and for Jews to actually stand up and live their lives free of that intimidation and hatred. And I certainly see a lot of that in London, where we had Jewish areas that have now more or less disappeared in North London, and have become Islamic areas, and Jews are no longer welcome. So, but that's a huge conversation that I'm seeing on the ground, and many of our viewers and listeners will be very well aware of. But Jarrow, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. We haven't seen each other since we caught up 2.5 years ago. I thoroughly enjoyed meeting you and spending time with you, and I'm so thankful that we could find this time for you to come on and share this paper, which I know you'll be updating
Yeah.
regularly as this situation changes. With President Trump can change anything in an hour, in a minute, with a tweet. So I know that's what's happening. But thank you so much for your time and expertise on the subject, Jarrow.
I greatly appreciate this opportunity. This is a, I think you can see my I really enjoyed this time and how much I appreciate this. It's not only the passion for the subject, but you're a great host, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate the opportunity to help educate your listeners and hopefully some people who have been trying to figure this out and what's going on and is there a potential solution. I hope I'm giving you and people some hope that in these Gaza tunnels there can actually be some light as they're filled in.
No, you have. As I've gone through it, here it is, and it is a roadmap that I'm extremely grateful that President Trump, whether he's read it or not, I know you've passed it on, seems to be following this idea. This is not Israel's problem, but this is a wider problem. So, Jarrow, once again, thank you, and I hope we can do fish and chips in a different restaurant there in the on the West Coast in the near future. And I do hope that your area and around can be rebuilt and returned to what it was. So thank you.
Can't imagine. Yeah, by the way, the archives of Arnold Schoenberg, most of them were burned. The
Wow.
20th century, yeah, the developer of the 12-tone uh, musical scale, just beyond belief. So again, pathways to citizenships is the answer here. And again, thank you very much, Peter.
Thanks, Cheryl.